Hey, everybody, welcome to your Saturday morning hangover cure. That's right, it is time for the weekend edition of Sports Frenzy 2.0. I'm the Maestro Kevin Crane, flying solo this week. The Conquistador called in sick, so you're going to have to deal with me this week. But here, as I tape on January the 19th, 2023, this episode hitting, of course, Saturday morning, the 21st. We'll still cover everything you need to get you through the weekend. Things to listen to, things to watch if you're not watching the NFL playoffs. And of course, the first segment is always about music. It is rock and roll. This particular week, we're going to do a little bit of a less rigid, more freeform music section here. We've talked about it here over the last month, Dave and I have, where there's just not a lot of new music coming out. December, January. We'll get some stuff coming out in February and March to get us back on track. So for now, what we're doing is we're kind of going to give you a general overview starting here this week and probably bleeding over into next week's weekend edition of the massive 4 CD deluxe version of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers live at the Fillmore 1997. Now, if you guys have been paying attention, you know that Dave and I have a rule about reviewing greatest hits packages, live albums, things like that. We're going to make an exception here for live at the Fillmore 1997 because a lot of this package is cover songs. So what we're going to do, I've gotten through about 2/3 of Live at the Fillmore. So I'm going to briefly discuss my impression so far. And then when Dave gets back next week, we'll end up covering the rest of it. Disc 4, for those of you who actually have the set. We're not going to review Tom Petty's hits. So that's kind of why this is an informal review. More interested in what kind of cover songs are on this, the feel of the album, the guest stars. So again, my general impression is I've gone through the first 3 CDs of the 4 CD deluxe edition. And I have to admit, as big of a fan of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers as I am, this seemed a little bit lifeless to me. And I'm sure a lot of rock and roll critics would disagree with me, but a lot of the cover songs that TP and the Heartbreakers do here is just, number one, the same old, the same feel to a lot of these cover songs. And I know Tom Petty grew up with these songs. They mean a lot to him. Of course, meant a lot to him since he is no longer with us, but it's a lot of old school rockabilly, doo-wop, R&B stuff from the 50s and the 60s. And then when he gets away from that genre, he picks the most basic, generic rock songs to cover. For example, early on, he does Call Me the Breeze, of course, an old J.J. Cale song, magnificently done by Leonard Skinner. That is the version, of course, most of us know and love. I didn't think Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers really did all that much with it. I thought it was, again, lifeless. That is going to be a key word here for me as I go through the first 2/3 of this box set, is that a lot of these songs just didn't have the propulsion, the vibe that the best of Tom Petty stuff did. Right after that, you get Time Is on My Side again. Another old school cover, most well known as a hit for the Rolling Stones. This one was a little better. I thought there was a little more punch to this one. Now, I have found the best moments in terms of the cover songs have been the instrumentals. So you've got a song like Slaughter on 10th Avenue, which I liked, thought it was really good. Again, instrumentals here. The Guitar Boogie Shuffle, that one I wasn't as big a fan of. Benmont Tench is really the star in a lot of these songs. Of course, the classic Booker T and the MG's instrumental, Green Onions, Benmont Tench on keyboards, really shines. One of the highlights so far on Live at the Fillmore 1997. But again, there seems to be a lot of the same basic old school songs that it just gets boring to me after a while. The highlights, I did kind of like back to back You Are My Sunshine, the old, I guess you'd almost call it the old grade school sing along. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. And then cleverly, the next song they pull out of the hat is the classic Bill Withers, Ain't No Sunshine. So I really did like that a lot. Now, I mentioned Benmont Tench on keyboards on a couple of these instrumentals. He was fantastic. He's also really good on I Want You Back Again, an old Zombies song. The song itself, the performance is okay, but again, Benmont Tench kills it on the keyboards. Friend of the Devil is a decent cover. Now, I believe that's an old Grateful Dead song. I know it more, and a few of you out there might know it more as something that was on films about ghosts. The first Counting Crows greatest hits collection, that was an extra track on that. And I like the Counting Crows version a little bit better than I did here with Tom Petty. Again, another easy, obligatory cover. You Really Got Me. Of course, the Kinks, Van Halen. Not bad. Another instrumental that I should mention that really caught the attention of the conquistador and I, and was really the driving force when we saw this for getting interested in possibly going through and reviewing this box set, is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers do a nice little cool version of the theme from Goldfinger, the old James Bond movie. And it's great. It's real, again, like I said, very interesting that the instrumentals throughout Live at the Fillmore seem to be the highlights for the most part. Now, again, we talked about the guest stars, the influences for Tom Petty. I found it interesting that there are no Beatles songs at all that I can see on Live at the Fillmore through 4 discs. We all know, though, that the Byrds were an unbelievably impactful, influential band on Tom Petty. So at one point in this residency, he brings on to the stage Roger McGuinn, of course, a key member of the Byrds, and they play a bunch of Byrds songs. Now, the one that we would all know is 8 Miles High. They do a really good version of that. Probably so far, as I mentioned, about 2/3 through, the best part of Live at the Fillmore 1997 is when TP and the Heartbreakers bring John Lee Hooker on stage to do 3 songs. Find My Baby, Serves You Right to Suffer, and Boogie Chillin'. Now, they let John Lee Hooker take over completely. Vocals, guitar, everything. They basically are just playing backup. And it works. It really works. It's probably the highlight of the entire set to this point. I've still got the 4th disc to go through. And again, Dave and I will play catch up next week on that. But I have to say the highlight so far has been this 3-song John Lee Hooker segment. Now, opposed to when he brought Roger McGuinn out, Tom Petty and his band still seemed to be the driving force when they did those songs. But again, John Lee Hooker takes over here, and it's a refreshing jolt of energy to the proceedings. So far, Live at the Fillmore 1997, it's okay. Definitely not worth a $50 investment, in my opinion. Have to look and see what's on the 2 CD version to see if that would be worth it. See if when they distill down the 4 CD version, maybe they made the right choices, maybe they didn't. We'll talk more about that next week, as well as finishing up with the back third of Live at the Fillmore. Now, of course, I've already looked. A lot of basic, easy covers coming here. Knocking on Heaven's Door, Johnny Be Good, Satisfaction, Louie Louie, Gloria. I mean, I would have appreciated a better mix of cover songs, not only in style and tone, but just pick a Stones song or two that we don't all really need to hear for the 75,000th time. Pick some songs that are a little bit different, a little bit off the beaten path, something that would make this a little bit more refreshing in terms of an overall box set. All right, 1 song to review here this week. And again, Dave's going to have to play catch up next week. Second single off of the 3rd album from the Winery Dogs, Richie Kotzen, Mike Portnoy, Billy Sheehan, is Mad World. It is not a remake. It is a new song. Of course, we know Cat Stevens had Mad World. That title has been used a lot over the last 30, 40, 50 years. But this is a new song for the Winery Dogs. It's okay. I didn't like it as much as I liked the lead-off track, Xanadu. This one seemed to me to be a little bit more showing off for Kotzen and Sheehan. Especially Kotzen's guitar. Sheehan gets a little bit of a bass solo at the end. The song itself is okay. Nothing spectacular. It's not awful. But I would give Mad World 2 frenzies out of 4. Paired with Xanadu, still looking forward to 3, their new album, which will be coming out, I believe, in about 2 to 3 weeks, late January, early February. Now, I felt bad, when we were taping last week's weekend edition. Of course, we tape a couple days earlier. So when we taped last week's weekend edition, we got kind of jumped at the last minute with the news that Jeff Beck had died. So we went ahead and mentioned it on last week's show, but I feel like it needs a little bit more discussion. Because I'm not professing to be a Jeff Beck fan by any means, but looking back, doing the research, there are some very interesting projects that Jeff Beck was involved in that I didn't really know about. Now, more recently, we know he played on Ozzy Osbourne's latest album, Patient Number 9. He played on a couple tracks on that. I did not realize he played on Tina Turner's hit song, Private Dancer, off the album of the same name. And then probably most impressively to me, because I love the song so much, is I did not realize he played the guitar on the fantastic, awesome John Bon Jovi solo song off of the Young Guns 2 soundtrack, Blaze of Glory, the title track. That is Jeff Beck. Fantastic guitar work on that song. So once again, needed to give Jeff Beck's passing its proper due. A couple extra minutes of looking back and honoring one of the great guitar players of all time. Now for next week, again, still in that desert, the dry zone, with not much new music to review. Bret Michaels does have a new song. We'll probably end up taking a look at that, Dave and I, in the next couple weeks. Back in the Day. I know he likes Hailstorm a lot. So we're probably going to review Daughtry and Lizzie Hale of Hailstorm, their pairing, as they redo Journey's classic Separate Ways, Worlds Apart. Boy, does that make me feel old. When modern rock stars are redoing songs that I grew up with when I was 17, 18 years old. Might possibly review Dirty Honey's Heartbreaker 2.0. I was a little disappointed when I first heard about this. I thought this was going to be a different take on possibly Led Zeppelin's Heartbreaker, maybe Pat Benatar's Heartbreaker, but this is just Dirty Honey doing a different version of one of their own songs. So I don't know. In a way, this kind of would violate the Sports Frenzy music rules that we just talked about. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But that's going to do it for segment 1 here on the weekend edition Sports Frenzy 2.0. Coming up next, movies. 2 reviews for you. The Pale Blue Eye on Netflix with Christian Bale, and Sick, which just debuted on Peacock, a Blumhouse horror movie with a COVID twist. Also, we'll be discussing the latest Jack Reacher novel. Again, I feel bad with Dave not here. Some of this stuff was content that we were supposed to review together, and he'll have to play catch up next week. But I've got to give you guys something. So that's what you're getting in segment 2. Segment 3, after that, We'll be talking about the White Lotus Season 2. Yes, somehow I got roped into this and I blew through Season 1 and Season 2. So we'll talk about Season 2, if it was any better than Season 1. We'll also talk about the debut of The Last of Us, also like the White Lotus, on HBO Max. And we'll have some TV and streaming news, and of course, moments of silence and entertainment world dumbasses of the week. But next up, as I mentioned, movies, movies, movies. Hang on, kids. I will be right back.
Stuck in a no-win situation? Wife being held captive while your feet bleed? Take a second to decompress. Pull out your smartphone and listen to Sports Frenzy 2.0 on Spotify, Anchor, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Breaker, Apple, Overcast, and Castbox. And don't forget to check out their Facebook page. The Maestro and the Conquistador will take your mind off your dire predicament and give you the best non-PC sports commentary you'll find anywhere. And once you compose your exit strategy and take down some German terrorists, you'll want to yell, "Yippee-ki-yay, Sports Frenzy 2.0!
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Sports Frenzy 2.0, the weekend edition. Your best cure for your Friday night hangover. Of course, this will hit Saturday morning, January the 21st, as I tape here solo on January the 19th, 2023. I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Glad to have you aboard. Dave will rejoin me next week. Segment 2, as always, here on the weekend edition is about movies, movies, movies. Have 2 reviews for you this week. First up, the Netflix original. Just debuted here within the last few weeks, The Pale Blue Eye. Starring who I think is the best actor around right now. That would be one Christian Bale. Now, of course, you guys know Dave and I went toe-to-toe here recently about the movie Amsterdam. He enjoyed it a lot more than I did. I thought it was garbage, but the one thing we did agree upon was Christian Bale, as always, was great. And The Pale Blue Eye is no exception. Once again, Christian Bale turns in a great performance, but he is not the only star of this movie. Let me give you a little bit of background. No spoilers. Never, ever here on Sports Frenzy do we spoil anything for you. Christian Bale plays a constable brought in to solve a murder at West Point. Now, the tricky thing here is the timeline. This is set well over 100 years ago. So we're going back before electricity, back before cell phones, back before any creature comforts. The beginnings of West Point, when the authorities in charge of the academy were worried that the government was going to shut them down. So a scandal like this, a murder, could spell the end for the West Point Academy. Who happens to be one of the cadets at West Point that Christian Bale's character brings in to help him, assist him in his investigation of the brutal slaying? That would be one Edgar A. Poe. Yes, Edgar Allan Poe. Played brilliantly. Already here, we're in the first month of 2023. I can tell you right now, Harry Melling, his performance as Edgar Allan Poe might be the best of the year already. We're not even 1 month into the year. He is unbelievable as Edgar Allan Poe. So you pair him with the great Christian Bale, this is an acting tour de force. Now, the story, the plot itself relies very heavily on coincidence, major coincidence. When we get the major plot twist in the last half an hour, does it make sense? Yes, but it's almost a cheat in that we aren't given enough information, really. We're given little bits and pieces, but we're not given enough information to really ever be expected to solve this mystery as Edgar Allan Poe does. There's your spoiler. Sorry. Poe ends up figuring out what happens in the end. You've got satanic rituals involved, past tragedies, arrogant cadets, entitled families. In the end, this is a very good movie. It's not great. Like I said, it relies too much on coincidence to really make the main mystery propel forward until we get again to the twist in the last half an hour. There are people out there, because Glass Onion, the second Knives Out mystery, debuted just a week or two before The Pale Blue Eye, they like to compare these two. A lot of people think The Pale Blue Eye is better. I do not. I do not subscribe to that notion. Glass Onion was a lot better. Glass Onion was a lot better, but again, that's in my wheelhouse. That's my type of, the Agatha Christie type of mystery, the quote-unquote locked room, multiple twists and turns, but well-written, making sense, not really much in terms of coincidence involved. That's my type of mystery. Glass Onion was much better, but that should not shy you away from watching The Pale Blue Eye, which is very good in its own accord. I get The Pale Blue Eye 3 frenzies. And again, as good as Christian Bale is in this, the star of this is Harry Melling playing Edgar Allan Poe. He is a revelation. He is fantastic in this. So again, probably not going to be on my list in 2023 of the best movies, but still, definitely a must-see. Check out The Pale Blue Eye right now on Netflix. Now, while The Pale Blue Eye is exclusive to Netflix, I watched another exclusive that just debuted within the last week or so. This one on Peacock. You guys know I am a sucker for a slasher flick, a really good horror movie. I'm trying to find them. I'm trying to seek them out. Yet it seems like maybe one time out of 10, I really find a good, creative, quality slasher flick. It is a genre that seems to inspire the laziest filmmakers because it's low budget, something we've touched on in the past. The slasher genre is low budget. So each and every studio out there is trying to churn out as many horror movies as they can, as quickly as they can, because the budgets are low. And if you hit, like we saw with Smile late last year, like we have seen here early this year with Megan, you can turn a nice little profit on a low budget horror movie. Now, Sick, which just hit Peacock, it's from Blumhouse. Of course, they are the top of the heap when it comes to horror movies right now. And they are the ones that churn them out left and right. And for the most part, they do their best. They try. They try to put out quality stuff, but in the end, they are just churning out horror movies as quickly as they can. They are becoming, dare I say, a monstrosity when it comes to how fast and how furious they are putting out horror movies. Now, Sick, I believe there was the notion, the idea that it might go to theaters, but in the end, it ends up exclusively on Peacock. We talked about the fact that Smile was supposed to go to Paramount Plus directly, and they changed their mind and put it out in the theaters, and that was a brilliant move for Paramount because Smile ended up making over $100 million at the domestic box office. I think Universal, Blumhouse, NBC all made the right choice putting Sick straight to streaming, because this is a horror movie. Of course, if you've seen the trailers, if you've heard anything about it, it's all about COVID. So this is a slasher flick with a COVID twist. Okay. How creative are they with this? How far down the rabbit hole did they go with this? Unfortunately, they didn't do a good job. There is one minor plot twist towards the end where you're supposed to go, oh no, really? That's what the killers were doing? Oh my goodness. It's not really that good of a movie. It's got all the requisite teenage young women screaming and yelling, beaten up and bloodied, running, getting hurt, fighting off attackers. I guess in an ironic twist, there is a lake involved. Is that supposed to be an homage to Friday the 13th, Camp Crystal Lake? If you want to take it as such, good for you. I didn't. It's a lazy horror movie. It's not worth your time. Again, the plot twist towards the end. No spoilers, but again, a nod to COVID and a damning statement about the use of social media. I will say that. I did appreciate that. In the end, that doesn't save it. It's not creative enough. It's not well written enough. It's short. It's barely over an hour and 20 minutes long. But Sick is just not worth your time. It is a subpar slasher flick for the self-absorbed cell phone generation. Is it better than Smile, which you guys know I hated? Yes. But it doesn't take much to be better than that piece of garbage. I will give Sick 1.5 frenzies out of 4. Again, do yourself a favor, watch something better like Glass Onion or, as I just reviewed, The Pale Blue Eye. If you want a smart, intelligent, more mature mystery suspense thriller, don't subject yourself to the generic COVID slasher film Sick. Okay, I'm going to touch on a couple things here, movie related, that, again, I wish Dave was here for, but he called in sick this week, so I've got to go it alone. But these were a couple topics in the movie world that I think he would have been more than happy to chime in on, especially because I know he hates one Ezra Miller. Of course, Ezra Miller is due to be in The Flash, coming out in a few months. James Gunn, of course, now in charge of the DC movie universe. We don't know what he's going to do outside of he's already told Henry Cavill, no, he's not going to be Superman. You figure Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman might be on the chopping block since he's pretty much canceled Wonder Woman 3. We've still got Shazam coming. We've got Aquaman coming, Blue Beetle in 2023, and The Flash. So Ezra Miller, of course, as you guys know, we've reported this here a lot over the past year, has been getting in trouble left and right. And I'm sorry, but he is a nut job, LB, TGQ, whatever your hyphenate, your self-titled label is, drag queen, whatever he is. He harassed a couple. I believe that was in Hawaii. And then in Vermont, he had to cut a plea deal here within the last couple weeks in a burglary case where he broke into somebody's house and stole a bunch of booze. And again, because he's a celebrity, he gets away with it. He cuts a plea deal. He gets 1 year probation. He gets a trespassing charge, all the felonies dropped, everything down to misdemeanor. $500 plus $192 fees for a total of a $692 fine. And like I said, 1 year probation. Do you think you or I, if we had done what he'd done, broken into somebody's house and stole a bunch of booze, would have gotten this kind of treatment? And I love the fact that his probation basically says he can't drink. What are the odds that you think he's not going to drink over the next year? He's obviously got drinking issues, drinking problems. He breaks into a house to steal alcohol. But again, because he's a one percenter, he gets away with it. And you can call me naive, and you can say that's just the way it is, but it's not right. Ezra Miller needs to start being held accountable for his immature, petulant actions, regardless of what class or group he belongs to. A group or class that has way too much power in this country based on the fact they're probably 4% of the population. Now, years ago, tell you a little story here. It's not an Uncle Kev story time type of tale, but again, something, if Dave was here, he would appreciate. years and years and years ago, there were some panelists here on Sports Frenzy. If you have not listened to our midweek Sports Frenzy, where we cover the world of sports, that's been around for 30 years. We've gone from cable access TV to YouTube and to now podcasts. But there was a time when we used to do Sports Frenzy Movie Night Out. We'd do it 3-4 times a year where we'd get together, whoever wanted to go out of the panel. The panel, of course, refers to Dave, the Conquistador, and the other guys who would pick football games, NASCAR, March Madness with us in our sports edition that airs here and anywhere you listen to your podcast every Thursday morning. Well, one of the movies we went to way, way back in the day was Grindhouse. Of course, Grindhouse was a double bill kind of thing with Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez, Planet Terror and Death Proof. Now, Rodriguez's entry was much, much better. Rose McGowan, of course, with her gun leg. But Death Proof had its moments, especially when you got to hear Kurt Russell whining like a baby when he was getting beat up by a bunch of women. But the coolest part of Grindhouse was the fake trailers that they put in between these two stories, these two featurettes that comprised Grindhouse. Now, a lot of you already know that one of those ended up being a movie series featuring Machete. Now, Machete, of course, was a character that was introduced in Spy Kids, but they made a trailer for his own movie and put it in the middle of Grindhouse, and it ended up spawning two movies, Machete and Machete Kills. There were rumors they were going to do a third one called Machete in Space, which unfortunately never came to fruition. Now, these were over-the-top, crazy, gory action movies. But one of the other trailers that is finally going to see the light of day as a feature film, Eli Roth. You probably know him best as the director of the two Hostel movies, Hostel. They were a little too much for me. But Eli Roth, of course, is considered a god of sorts in the horror genre. And he did a trailer for Grindhouse called Thanksgiving with a blood-spewing turkey, as I recall. Well, he is finally, after years and years and years of talking about proceeding with a feature, he will finally do it. Eli Roth is making a feature film based on that Grindhouse trailer, a pilgrim, a man dressed as a pilgrim who will be a slasher killer in the movie called Thanksgiving. Look for that. I believe it's coming this year. Of course, November 2023. A little preview for next week. Dave and I will be looking at a bunch of new trailers. We will look at the trailer for Marlowe, finally, with Liam Neeson as Raymond Chandler's classic detective, Philip Marlowe. Hulu has got a series coming out, The History of the World Part 2. Of course, Mel Brooks, decades ago, put out History of the World Part 1. Finally, we get the follow-up. The CW's last gasp, I'm thinking, at keeping the DC Universe alive on television, Gotham Knights, and Knock at the Cabin coming out here very soon. The latest from M. Night Shyamalan, who I think he's fantastic, for better or for worse. Some of his movies are okay, some are brilliant, but there's always an ingenious idea behind all of his movies. There are some things about this trailer I love, some things about the trailer that I can't stand. We will talk about those trailers next week. And then finally, moving on to the book world. I know normally this is the conquistadors realm. But of course, this was the 1 week. I read 8, 9, 10 books a year at most. I finally got a book done that we could review together, and Dave calls off sick. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. He and I will probably go more in depth on this next week, but the latest book that came out late fall 2022 involving Jack Reacher from Lee and Andrew Child. The book is No Plan B. I have to admit, this was not one of my favorite Reacher books. This one went all over the map. I mean, at the end, it almost seemed like it should have been a Bond movie. Again, I will save more detail for next week when Dave and I can get into it more. But those of you out there who are Reacher fans who have not picked up the latest yet, No Plan B, I'm not going to tell you not to read it. It's Reacher. It's still got its moments. Some of the fight scenes are great, as you would expect. But I wonder how much is being written by Lee Child now and how much is being written by Andrew Child, his brother. Again, this book goes there's 4 different plot points in No Plan B that end up converging. And like we didn't know that was going to happen. So you can kind of see what's coming. It's predictable to a point. And like I said, the one big twist at the end kind of goes way, way beyond what you would expect from a Reacher novel, almost goes into James Bond territory. So that didn't make it, again, one of the best Reacher novels for me. I will give you my review with Dave next week, but I will tell you my rating right now, just to make sure you guys know I'm not cheating you. I'll give it a week 3 frenzies out of 4. So still, if you're a Reacher fan, you'll get through it. You'll enjoy it to a point, but you'll probably see the same flaws in it that I did. And again, you got to put a little snot-nosed brat into the... Why is it that we have to force these dumbass teenagers into each and every movie and book and act like they're the saviors of the universe when they couldn't figure out a way to wipe their own ass if they had 5 rolls of toilet paper sitting in front of them? I can't stand this. It goes back to James Cameron. Yes, your movie god out there who puts out these ridiculous Avatar movies. This goes back to him and Terminator 2. He's the cause of all this. Terminator 2 Judgment Day, I will still say, destroyed any last chance we had of having a young male or female heroine or hero who could actually think. Because James Conner, savior of the world in the future in T2, was a whiny little bitch. Edward Furlong was just an irritating little punk who you wanted to punch in the face. And unfortunately now, 3 decades later, we're still putting up with this crap? Give me a strong character. I want strong female characters. I want strong male characters. Black, white, LGBTQ, teenage. All we want are strong characters, original characters. And until Hollywood figures that out and stops treating us like idiots, this kind of crap is what we're stuck with. All right, that's it for segment 2. Coming up next, TV and streaming. The White Lotus Season 2, the first episode of The Last of Us. I'll be right back.
When the mindless zombies at the major sports networks won't leave you alone. When the forces of evil on local sports radio have you cornered. Load up the boomstick known as Sports Frenzy 2.0. Available on Spotify, Anchor, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Breaker, Apple, Overcast, and Castbox. Kevin Dave will drive the dull and boring voices in your head away and offer you the sports salvation you need. New episodes drop every Thursday. And don't forget the weekend edition every Saturday, where the Maestro and the Conquistador might just review your favorite horror flick. Sports Frenzy 2.0. It's groovy.
All right, everybody. Third and final segment here, your hangover cure. Every Saturday morning, Sports Frenzy's weekend edition. Taping here January the 19th. This will hit Saturday morning, January the 21st, 2023. The Maestro flying solo this week. I do feel bad about the last segment because, again, Dave and I were supposed to review The Pale Blue Eye together, supposed to review No Plan B, the new Reacher novel together, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about both of them next week as Dave plays catch up. But this final segment here, I don't feel so bad because this stuff, these are solo reviews. I don't really think Dave is going to be into either one of these HBO Max shows. Now, next week will be fun because we will talk about 2 revivals, reboots. We'll talk about the new Night Court on NBC. John Larroquette is back as Dan Fielding. And we will also, of course, the long-awaited, great and glorious Netflix exclusive, That 90s Show with our man, Red Foreman. Red and Kitty are back. So, of course, Dave and I will start talking about That 90s Show next week. But for me this week, let's start off with the second biggest debut on HBO Max for a series in the last 5 years. Of course, only bested by House of the Dragon because people just love Game of Thrones, and I still don't really know why. But The Last of Us, based on the PlayStation video game, is another end of the world apocalypse zombie type show. I have to admit, the first episode, which dropped this past Sunday, of course, second episode should be hitting as you are listening to this Saturday morning tomorrow. I don't know if I'm really going to stick with this very long unless we get something different out of it. There are only so many of these end of the world, plague, zombie shows and movies that I can deal with. And there's only so far you can really stretch them and go. The Walking Dead obviously was the top level, cream of the crop, and even that outstayed its welcome by a couple seasons. So The Last of Us, it's not necessarily flesh-eating zombies. It's more of a flesh-eating fungi that inhabits a body, and that body needs to spread the fungus to other bodies. But yes, there is blood and gore and all the usual grotesque special effects that accompany a movie like this. And again, one episode, I'm not going to give up on it on one episode, but I'm not seeing a lot that's new, that's different. And I'm not going to waste my time. My time left on this earth is way too short, way too precious to watch yet another plague zombie thriller that doesn't offer anything new. Now, the acting is pretty good. Your lead actor, I believe Pedro Pascal, I've always liked him. He's very good as the main character here. Good to see Anna Torv back. Anna Torv, for all you geeks out there, you guys know her from the pretty cool Fox series Fringe. But of course, you got another, and I've mentioned this before, and it ruins almost every show and movie. You've got another foul-mouthed, arrogant, pretentious teenager. Of course, she is key to the whole plot. I know anybody who's played The Last of Us is going to say the same thing. I haven't, so maybe I'm off base. I'm assuming the show is following the plot line of the game. But again, we all know what happens when you assume. Again, could we have a show where the teenagers are a little bit smarter, a little bit less vulgar, and respect their elders a little tiny bit more than they do? Yes, you can say that's me being get off my lawn guy. But I happen to have more faith in the younger generation than a lot of these shows and movies do. I don't think they're all like this. I know they're not all like this. But we always have to do this for shock value. So The Last of Us, I've got my problems with it. There's some good, there's some bad. So far, again, I'll stick with it for an episode or two. If it doesn't get any better, I'm probably going to bail. Now, speaking of a show that I thought I was going to bail on, that I ended up sticking with, that my daughter recommended to me. And she said, you got to watch The White Lotus. You got to watch The White Lotus. And I held off for months and months and months. I had watched the first episode of season 1, and all I could think was, why do I want to watch a show where every character is a detestable, reprehensible human being on one level or another? So here, about a month ago, I revisited season 1. It's only 6 episodes. I thought, let's go ahead and see if we can get through this. It got marginally better. You guys know I just reviewed it a couple weeks ago. So I decided, let's jump into season 2. Again, it's getting all sorts of acclaim. Season 2 just won a Golden Globe for Best Limited Series. Jennifer Coolidge just won Best Actress in a Limited Series. And Jennifer Coolidge is really the main holdover, the mainstay from season 1 to season 2. Now, I'm not a fan. I am not a fan of her at all. I find it ridiculous that we award somebody for being a ditzy old blonde and call it great acting. Because by all accounts, that's what she is a ditzy old blonde. Yet somehow we're showering her with accolades and awards. Sorry, I don't think she's a great actress. Now, in terms of the writing for The White Lotus, I thought it was a little bit better in season 2. The characters are still not wonderful people, but they are not nearly as awful as the characters from season 1. Season 1 took place at the White Lotus Resort in Hawaii. Season 2 is the White Lotus Resort in Italy. The characters here are a little bit more relatable, a little bit more frail, not just out and out assholes like season 1. So in that respect, I like the show a little bit more. The characters a little bit more relatable. Aubrey Plaza, she's an interesting actress. Going back to Parks and Recreation, of course. You can't take your eyes off of her, but it's because she's like Jennifer Coolidge in that she has a persona. I don't think she's a great actress. I think she, as a person, has just got some kind of a vibe. Whereas Jennifer Coolidge comes off as more of just a ditzy blonde. Aubrey Plaza has a sense of menace. Little bit of brattiness that you don't like, that kind of an edge, but definitely has a sense of menace. So again, the White Lotus, just like first season, season 2 starts off right off the bat, dead body found. In this case, as opposed to season 1, where it's just one dead body being loaded onto an airplane, and you've got to figure out through the course of the first episodes, the 6 episodes in season 1, who's the dead person. Because then it time jumps back to when everybody arrives for the week at the resort. So season 2 does the same thing, except there's multiple dead bodies. And again, right after you're introduced to that, you time jump back to this group of people arriving at the Italian White Lotus Resort. And again, same type of themes. Lots of sex. Everybody's looking to get laid. They're dealing with their insecurities. Some people are just out and out nasty. Again, that's more season 1 than season 2. So season 2 of The White Lotus, marginally better than season 1. I will give season 2 2.5 frenzies. Again, I think they toned down the negativity, the nastiness in the characters enough where it was a little more enjoyable, a little more relatable. You had a little more empathy for most of the characters in season 2. Yes, when they do season 3, wherever that ends up being, whatever far-flung country they decide to drop another White Lotus resort into, I will most likely be there to watch it. And this is one of those shows where I don't really understand why I'm watching it, because I'm not giving it high marks, but somehow it just sucks you in. Because again, number one, it does play out like an interesting murder mystery to a certain point. And then number two, you just want to see which of these awful people ends up getting their just desserts. All right, TV and streaming news. Great news from Netflix. Netflix announced the debut dates for most of their movies for 2023 here within the last couple days. And the one big one I loved Extraction. Extraction was phenomenal. One of the best action movies I have seen probably in 20 years. Extraction 2 with Chris Hemsworth will be hitting Netflix on June the 16th. Mark your calendars. And that will definitely be reviewed here on the weekend edition. Now, Dave, again, not here. This is a little bit of news that I had for him. I don't watch the show. The ads don't seem funny to me, but I know he likes watching Ghosts on CBS. Ghosts has been renewed for season 3. We mentioned HBO Max. Of course, The Last of Us and The White Lotus are both on HBO Max. We're still waiting to see what's going to happen when they merge HBO Max with Discovery Plus. But for now, they've bumped the no ad price up. This is just for the top level, no ads version of HBO Max has gone from $14.99 up to $15.99 a month, making it the most expensive streaming service out there, blasting past Netflix. Boy, doesn't that make HBO Max proud. And of course, we've discussed, we've documented the financial problems that Warner Brothers, Discovery, and HBO have had, how they've been dumping series that are almost complete, going into post-production just to basically write them off on their taxes. I would love to talk to a Hollywood accountant and have them explain to me how that works, where you're able to save more money by taking an almost completed movie or TV show and just dumping it. On the animated front, Phineas and Ferb is coming back. One of the more creative animated shows of recent years. They're going to be reviving that with a 2-season, 40-episode order. Now, on the downside, for those Rick and Morty fans out there, and I know there's a lot, I know the Conquistador watches it. Rick and Morty co-creator Justin Roiland is facing 7 years jail time for 2 counts of felony domestic violence going back to an incident in January of 2020. Yikes. Unfortunately, it seems like this stuff is more and more common. So as much as I rail on the entitlement of Hollywood and the denizens of Hollywood, and occasionally, we talked about Ezra Miller here in the last segment. I still think he gets a slap on the wrist for what he did, but Justin Roiland is looking at a lot harsher penalty for a lot more egregious crime. And occasionally, the wheels of justice do grind over the cherished West Coast people. And of course, next week, Dave and I will talk more about Alec Baldwin and the decision that came down today, where he will be charged with involuntary manslaughter for the shooting on the set of Rust. All right, moments of silence. I love The Wire. Again, another reference to HBO. I think The Wire is truly worthy of all the praise it gets. It is one of the greatest television shows of all time. Al Brown, who played Colonel Valchek on The Wire, passed away here recently. Daughter of Elvis Presley, of course, Lisa Marie Presley. You guys all know this by now. This happened right after we finished up last week's episode. Lisa Marie Presley dies at 54 years old. Drummer for Bachman Turner Overdrive, Robbie Bachman, passes away here recently. And finally, gonna talk a little bit of family here. I don't usually talk about my family life. My parents are both gone. I'm an only child. But I do remember my dad always talking about these two beautiful women from Europe, Sophia Loren and Gina Lollobrigida. Gina Lollobrigida was considered for a time the most beautiful woman in the world. Believe me, I could tell from my dad's reaction that he thought she was. So thoughts and prayers go out to the family and friends of Al Brown, Lisa Marie Presley, Robbie Bachman, and Gina Lollobrigida. All right, we have to pivot, as we always do. As Ross Geller said on Friends, pivot from sadness to idiocy. 4 monumental dumbasses this week on the weekend edition to wrap everything up. First up, Paramount Plus. This is no judging of the show itself. Mayor of Kingstown looks fantastic. I'm still trying to find some time to start watching it. And of course, I love Jeremy Renner. I think he's fantastic. And we all know about the tragic accident with the snowplow. We still haven't gotten word of really how extensive his injuries are. There are people out there saying he might not walk again. I hope that is not the case. But the key art, basically, that's the movie poster. Even though it's a TV show, the movie poster, the promo pictures that they put out, because season 2 just started up on Paramount Plus for Mayor of Kingstown, showed a picture of Jeremy Renner basically beaten up and bloodied. But nobody figured for a week or two that this was in bad taste, given the pictures we've seen of Jeremy Renner in his hospital bed. They finally here, within the last few days, decided to quote-unquote update the key art to make him look not quite so messy and bloody and beaten up. Hey, great job, Paramount. Only took you a couple weeks to figure out you needed to be a little bit more sensitive to Jeremy Renner's situation, you dumbasses. All right, we recently crowned a new Miss Universe. But that's really not the story. The story is posts that are put out by the new owner, the current owner of the Miss Universe pageant, quote unquote, celebrating the power of feminism. The only problem is, do you guys know who owns the Miss Universe pageant right now? A trans woman who was born a male. So this press release goes on and on about celebrating the power of women and how we need to, again, celebrate the power of feminism. You were born a man. Isn't a little bit degrading to women, actual biological women, when a trans woman talks about how she knows, he knows, it knows about what it's like to be a woman, what it's like to be feminine? I'm sorry, that's an insult to women everywhere. And the owner of the Miss Universe pageant, he, she, it, is a dumbass. Staying in the same vein, the same negative vein with the LGBTQ plus community, quote unquote artist Lauer Flom, I believe in Canada, that he resides in Canada, has been taking books from the Harry Potter series and rebinding them, taking away all mentions, ripping out pages, changing the covers to remove any mention of J.K. Rowling. Because, of course, we know J.K. Rowling said some things about the LGBTQ plus community that they didn't like, because I don't think they like anything unless you absolutely bow down and kiss their ass. They didn't like it, so now she's considered a homophobe, a transphobe. So Lauer Flom felt it was necessary to start taking these Harry Potter books, removing all mention of J.K. Rowling, and then reselling them. Hey, guess what he's reselling them for? $170. Now, supposedly part of that is going to charities to support the LGBTQ plus community. But doesn't that seem a little odd to you? That this guy, and it's legal. I read some things about this, did some research. What he's doing is legal. I find it pathetic and petty and immature, but it's legal. But selling it for $170, if he really wanted to make a statement, if he really wanted to make a point, why not sell them back to people who want to support the cause for the barest minimum cost? Basically charge them for what it cost for labor and materials, and you want to throw in a couple extra bucks for the charity, so be it. I'm sorry, $170, he's making money off of this, and I find that despicable, and I think he is a dumbass. And then finally, I never ever thought I would say this. We go back about a month or so, and Dave and I were blown away that we actually had to defend Whoopi Goldberg because she was defending Blazing Saddles from cancel culture. Now, here I am, the Maestro. I have to defend PETA. PETA! I can't stand PETA. people for the ethical treatment of animals. Now, of course, we all want animals to be treated decently and fairly. But of course, PETA goes way too far, as any fringe radical group does. But in this case, I am with PETA 100%. Hamtramck, Michigan. You try to pronounce this. Hamtramck, Michigan. Recently approved the religious sacrifice of animals within their jurisdiction. Yes, you heard me right. This is not the Middle Ages. This is 2023 America. And we have got an area in Michigan that has approved sacrificing animals on religious basis. Are you fucking kidding me? Are we now barbarians? Are we this short-sighted and stupid? I'm all for religious freedom. I am all for letting people believe what they want, but there is a limit. And to me, I'm with PETA. The limit is sacrificing animals in the name of your religion. You know what they call that to me? Satanism. If you have a religion that you believe in that tells you you should be sacrificing animals, I don't care if birds, goats, whatever, maybe you should check out another form of belief system. The city elders of Hamtramck, Michigan, and the people that back this are a bunch of dumbasses. And that's going to do it for the weekend edition, kids. Sorry to end on such a down note, but that's what we do. Next week, Dave will be back. We will talk to you next Saturday. See ya.